the network.
Using like cross-platform data for artists to be able to, I guess, determine one, if their marketing strategies are working, and then two, I guess, for being able to identify maybe like other possible opportunities that they didn't see or didn't know about before.
So this might be in reference to an article that I wrote recently with our data scientist, Josh. So this sort of goes back to the relationship between different metrics. We looked at, patterns of early growth, essentially, for artists. And we were just, giving a snapshot of different possibilities for trends you might see. So like one was just straight growth across all platforms. Obviously, that's a good sign if it's, healthy, solid growth across all platforms. That's you're doing something right, and you should continue that momentum. There was another one that was the monthly listeners were just through the roof, but the followers were not keeping up with that.
Yeah.
And we looked at why that was, and it was someone who had been added to a bunch of like classical concentration playlists because it was really like pleasant piano music.
Yeah.
So for him, or for that artist, maybe their goal isn't to be a touring artist. Maybe they just want to land on these playlists and get some residual income from that. And they are totally succeeding in that regard. But understanding the relationship between how those trend lines, how those different metrics, how they relate to each other and how they grow together or not grow together, will tell you something about either something that has worked for you or something that you should continue to or shoot for, I guess.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting in that because I remember the example of the guy. He had about 1.2 million listeners off a playlist, and his growth count didn't really go up. So are there any theories as to why maybe that was? Was it maybe like the wrong selection of playlists that he was in, or just
I think
profile optimization thing?
Yeah, I think he's just like it wasn't like an artist profile, People were just listening passively to these very pleasant songs, which is totally fine. There's no right way to do music or to grow yourself as a musician, really. Some people grow themselves as a brand. Some people grow themselves as like a functional use of their music, like to help relax people or whatever. There's no right avenue to go down. It's just knowing what your goals are and knowing how to understand your data to achieve those goals.
Have you guys noticed if other platforms tend to pay attention to how an artist is moving on one platform? Do you see that affect? Like, for instance, if an artist's song is, let's say, going viral on Spotify, is there usually a correlation between like the Apple numbers going up and maybe the search for it going up on YouTube? Have you guys noticed things like that on the back end? Or is it because it feels like a vague question now saying it out loud, because I've seen isolated incidents where we've encountered artists who do crazy on Spotify. The song is in hundreds of thousands, crossing millions, but then their Apple monthly listeners aren't necessarily saying. But then we've also seen, we've had clients before where we'll see them get picked up by editorial playlists or major playlists on Spotify, and then like days later, Apple Music picked them up on another playlist as well. So I was just wondering if you guys have you seen anything in the back end to kind of like correlate with that?
I mean, short answer is no, but it's because we actually haven't looked. I mean, I think that's a really cool thing for you to bring up, because honestly, we haven't even thought about that. I think it makes sense that the curators at Apple or Spotify or whatever DSP are thinking of, they're obviously looking at each other. I mean, you know, Nike and Reebok and Adidas, they're always looking at what each other are doing on the shoe. Like, so it just makes sense that they're paying attention to each other. And so if someone catches on to a new artist and they're is doing well on, you know, streaming platform A, then streaming platform B is probably going to try to get a piece of that, because you know, if like the general streaming audience is really digging an artist and they're not onto it yet, that's I mean, it's just a classic, you know, no, please listen to that person on us, with us. So that makes sense on kind of like a competitive level. But that feature that Rutger mentioned earlier, this playlist journeys things that we have, we only do it right now within each DSP. So we look at the way Spotify playlists relate to other Spotify playlists, and also that with Apple Music. But we could totally do it from really cool, in between streaming platforms. It would be a hell of a calculation, and it would take a lot of computing power. But I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, that said, we came out with so Jason and I write. I mean, we have another one in the works, but we write these semi-annual reports, and the last one we did, we looked at the top 30 playlists across 4 DSPs, and we did sort of like a genre, artist genre and artist geography distribution. And there were some differences in terms of like what genres tend to do better or are added more to the top playlists. So there are some differences. Obviously, I don't know how dynamic that is in terms of like how often that changes, but Amazon, you know, is known for being really big for country artists. So, and like Deezer is, I mean, what we discovered through our data analysis is like really big for like Latin and Caribbean genres. So there is, in a more macro sense, you can think about it that way as well.
Like there are platforms that the audiences for certain genres of music do tend to migrate to these platforms a lot more. Because I mean, it's like, it seems like rap and pop dominate Spotify, but I have noticed the Caribbean music, like Afrobeats, that type of stuff seems to dominate these platforms. That's interesting. Oh, okay.
I mean, that's what our analysis suggested that. I don't know that we could say like definitively like this audience base is more this, but in terms of what genres were added to the top playlists, if you take that as an indication of that, then yes.
Okay. It's
the network.